I think the big misconception is that if you're having honey, it's healthier than sugar.
So you can have however much you want.
You can have as much as you want because, you know, it's got all these vitamins and things like that. Yes, honey has got some vitamins and minerals in there. And yes, it's got some immune properties. So, I mean, if you are sick, we've seen that people who are sick who do consume some honey, it does help to alleviate some of their symptoms. But it's not necessarily healthier.
Welcome to Chefing Beyond the Kitchen. I'm your host, Mogau. Join us for conversations with amazing people doing amazing things in food. Welcome to Chefing Beyond the Kitchen, and today my guest is Dietitian Aziwe.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for making the time to join us today. I am so excited to delve into this conversation. Many misconceptions, I think, about what you do, and really to educate everybody about what a dietitian does.
Yeah, no, I'm really looking forward to it. I think, the things I see on social media these days. So it's going to be really great to actually just let people know what we do.
What's what.
Yeah, what's what.
But before that, we're going to do some icebreakers.
Okay.
What did you have for breakfast today as a dietitian?
Oh, as a dietitian, I had some fruit and then I had a meal replacement yogurty bowl. So I mixed together some of that and that was my breakfast. Very quick on the go. I did not have time. This morning was a busy one. So I just grabbed what I could and I had it on the way and I was up.
And is that your usual breakfast?
My usual breakfast is actually an overnight oats. I have been eating this oats for the past easily 10 to 12 years.
Okay,
exact
that's
same
a long time.
It's a very long time. It's the raw oats with yogurt. I add in a little bit of peanut butter or chia seeds and then banana. That's like my go-to. Put it together, 2 minutes in the fridge, done. Just wake up, grab and go.
Very different to the breakfast I have, but anyway.
Mine is very boring, very, very boring.
No, yours is very healthy, very healthy. I admire that. When is the last time you smiled and what made you smile?
The last time I smiled, I mean, just now, I think we were having a good conversation off camera.
Yeah.
I think it's always really, for me, nice to see people who actually value what you do and who actually are really interested in what you do. So that was the last conversation that made me smile. Yeah.
Oh, that's nice. And what is your favorite thing right now? It could be anything that you're loving right now.
Thing. Right now, I would have to say I never used to understand people who are runners, that just don't shut up about running. But I think I got bitten by the running bug because I joined a running club recently and I've been loving it so much. And it's like, it's something I speak about so much more. And now I'm like, okay, I get it because I feel like I've just gotten bitten by the running bug.
Okay, so you're that girl.
Yeah, I'm at 5 a.m. twice a week.
Exercising.
We try. I'm trying to because I have not been this girl for the past few years. Lockdown really set me back.
Well, I love to hear it.
Yeah.
One day, I aspire to be you one day.
No, you will.
To be like you. So I think in starting this conversation, taking from what we were talking about off camera, please explain to me what a dietitian does and how is that different from what a nutritionist does? Because I think there's so many misconceptions. People don't really know what the difference between the two is. So please enlighten us. What does a dietitian do and how is that different from what a nutritionist does?
You know, a dietitian is very much, I say, the people who deal with nutrition science in the sense of nutrition therapy. So a dietitian works in a hospital setting. We can work in a neonatal ICU to help the premature babies gain weight properly. We can work in every ward essentially in the hospital because anyone who is unwell does actually need a dietitian who can help to optimize their, actually helps with reducing length of stay in the hospital by seeing a dietitian, so that we can get those vitamins and minerals that are going to support the healing process as well. And then depending on the chronic condition, there's a lot of chronic conditions that have to do with diseases of lifestyle, for instance. So that's where dietitians can play a role. We actually have a very, very broad space that we can work in. So the hospital space is one of them, but also community nutrition. So in clinics, this is public sector or private sector, because I know a lot of people think dietitians are only for, people who have money.
Yeah.
But I've had my own experience also working in a public hospital as well in the Eastern Cape. So there is really a need for dietitians in all areas. So another space that we work in is just in general, for people who are looking to be healthy, people who want to lose weight. That's the most common thing that people would think dietitian
weight loss.
But there's so much more. I mean, I've worked with people who want to gain weight. I've worked with people who have vitamin and mineral deficiencies. So there is such a variety of what we can do. And we can also work in the food service industry. We're able to do a lot of training around hazard and critical control points, making sure that the hygiene in the kitchen is up to standard. So menus as well. So we'll work on creating different menus for people who have different chronic conditions, if it's in a hospital setting or if it's in an old age home setting. There's a lot. I mean, there's dietitians who also work with athletes as well. I mean, because athletes also need nutrition to actually make sure that they optimize their performance. It actually improves their performance in terms of whatever sports they're in. So there's actually quite a big variety of what we can do. Now, I think the question between dietitian versus nutritionist is quite layered, because are we talking nutritionist or registered nutritionist? So a registered nutritionist would be someone who would have done an undergrad, similar to what a dietitian does. So we do usually a 4-year undergraduate program, which is a Bachelor of Science in most cases. And then we have to do a year of community service. So that would be...
So kind of like what doctors do.
Exactly. So we get placed, and then we have to do 1 year, wherever we've been placed for community service. And then a registered nutritionist would be someone who can do everything except for hospital work. So they can work in the clinics. So that would be more chronic disease management. So people with diabetes, people who have TB, who need to gain weight again, people who need to lose weight, people with heart diseases, all of those chronic kind of conditions. Where a nutritionist is someone who... You could have done a course in nutrition, but the length of the course is not as regulated. So with us as registered dietitians and registered nutritionists, because we're registered with the Healthcare Professions Council of South Africa, so the HPCSA, and we have to actually do these CPD points, so professional development points, to make sure that we are keeping up with the latest ethics, the latest nutrition science. So we have to actually continuously be learning so that we don't ever communicate any nutrition science that's outdated, where nutritionists don't have a board that's kind of keeping them to account. I can be someone who can be reported on the Healthcare Professions Council of South Africa if I do anything that's unethical, if I breach any codes of conduct in terms of just the professional code of conduct as healthcare professionals, where there isn't any of that kind of regulation with nutritionists. So the difference, I think a nutritionist would be someone who could help people perhaps for more general, like healthy eating tips, things like that. But when we get into the medical space, that's where a nutritionist would need to then refer to a dietitian, because it's out of kind of their scope of practice. But again, it's very challenging to say nutritionist in general, because I could have someone who did a year course, I could have someone who had a 2-day course, I could have someone who had a 2-week course. So because it's unregulated, that's where you have to really just do your research and find out, if this is someone who's going to suit the needs that you have. If it's more medical, I would definitely say go and see a dietitian.
And I think that's such important information for people to know, especially now with social media. You see someone online and they're speaking about, nutrition and health, like type conversations, and we just assume that they know what they're talking about, which is so dangerous.
Exactly, and that's the thing. It's very nutrition. information can really be make or break for a lot of people, because we underestimate how food can be linked to any kind of chronic conditions. And I mean, I've had clients who have come to me who now have high cholesterol because they were on a plan from someone who was prescribing certain types of fats a little bit more, that then increased their cholesterol levels. So it is really important to just do your research and go to a health professional if you know that you need more care. But you know, there is a space for everyone, of course, but I would really say do your research.
Absolutely. When I first saw you online, I saw you were talking about pap, and for me it was so inspired that you're this dietitian who's black, who is talking about foods that black people eat. I think that there's that gap in the market to speak to us about food we actually eat, and I think that's the reason why more black people don't see the need for a dietitian, because you always just feel like it's going to tell me about things that I won't have access to. So yeah, kudos to you for making it accessible. But how did it start? How did you become this dietitian that you are today?
Oh, thank you for saying that. I really appreciate it. I think, sure, when it comes to the nutrition space, there is very much a lack of representation. I'm fortunate enough to have grown up around you know, my mom is one of my biggest inspirations. She's always been very passionate about health. Same with my dad. I mean, you know, growing up in the Eastern Cape, he was always very passionate about, you know, vegetable gardens, eating vegetables in every meal. So I really got a lot of inspiration from them. And I had this passion to help people and this passion for food. But I was trying to see how I could kind of bring all of that together in a way that also allows me to be creative, but also kind of own my own business one day as well. And when I found out about the profession, I just thought this is so
perfect.
me. This is perfect. Yeah. The first time I think I realized that I knew that this was something that was for me was when I went and I saw a dietitian myself, just to see how, you know, the job shadowing, just to see what they do. And I just remember thinking, there's so much that can be done here. And I remember looking around in the offices, because there was lots of dietitians in that hospital, but not a single dietitian looked like me. And a lot of the patients we were seeing looked like me. So it really, really made me feel so passionate to be someone who can also speak to people who can feel comfortable to actually see a dietitian who represents them, who can speak about the foods that they know, who's not going to tell them, you can't eat pap, you must eat quinoa, when you have never seen quinoa in your life. You don't even know how to prepare it. You know, it's or maybe it's out of your budget, or you just don't enjoy it, you know, things like that. So yeah, I've really, that was where I really came from. And my passion for food is something that I've always been very strong and adamant about, especially also with my clients, because I don't want people to think that nutrition is supposed to be boring, or that the food must be bland, or that it must be expensive. Exactly. So I also try and make sure that with my clients or on social media, I show people that, look, actually, you can actually be healthy.
Your favorite foods.
Include your favorite foods, exactly. And it can be affordable. It's just how you are navigating it and how you're planning around it, which is the very important thing.
So then tell me about your educational background. What did you study to become a dietitian?
So I studied a Bachelor of Science in Human Nutrition Dietetics at Stellenbosch. There's very few of us out there, so shout out to all of the Stellenbosch alumni. So that was a 4-year degree. So within the degree, there's a lot that we learn. We learn a lot of food science. We learn a lot about nutrition therapy or therapeutic nutrition. So that's the hospital side of things, community nutrition. So it's such a variety that you learn. And one reason why you also have to keep learning outside of what I've studied is that there's just so much. There's so much, and there's so much detail you need in everything. So that's why continuously learning is the most exciting thing about my profession.
You have quite the following on TikTok and on Instagram, and that's actually how I discovered you. So tell me about your use of these platforms to continue to educate.
Yeah, I think it's something I was really passionate about. Actually, in first year, I was a very over-eager first year. I organized a meeting with my head of department because I was so passionate about trying to debunk things on social media. It's something that's from the get-go, I mean, I've always wanted to speak out about. And she told me, she actually encouraged against me speaking on social media until
Why is that?
she wanted, her angle was that you need to speak when you're qualified.
Okay,
you're still too young in the profession. You may give more misinformation when you don't have the full picture yet. So once you have the full picture, then we encourage you to get into that space. But for now, learn. So I was just absorbing all the information until then, and as soon as I graduated, the first thing I did was convert my pages into nutrition pages. So it's something that during lockdown really became a passion project for me, because especially when I was placed in the middle of rural Eastern Cape, so it was an outlet for me to be creative. It was a way that I could still cook, because I mean, we were in the middle of nowhere. So if I wanted to make any meals, I had to really do everything from scratch. There's no restaurants. I had to be creative. So that's where it came from. But I think it's really just comes from that passion to put out nutrition information that's also easy to understand, that speaks to our context as South Africans, as Black South Africans, and to really just debunk the misinformation, because there's just so much information that do I eat sugar? Do I not eat sugar? Do I do this? Do I eat bread?
Is honey
do I
better
not?
than sugar?
Is it honey? Is it sugar? Which one? So it's really something that I've wanted to use to really just debunk all of these diet trends. And it's something that I've also ventured into the podcast space with a colleague of mine, because we want to try and debunk these trends even further, because there's only so much time you have when you are on a platform like Instagram. So it's something I'm super passionate about, I would say, and I will continue to debunk as much as I need to.
I think that's so important, particularly as a chef. I see it constantly online, where I see chefs sharing nutrition information. And I know that that's not one of the things we trained in. We taught how to cook good food, make it delicious, and to present it well, but not necessarily about, nutrition information. So I'm not trained, for instance, to tell you what to eat if you have diabetes or whatever kind of disease. And I think that it's so dangerous for people who are just chefs to venture into that space, to now give nutrition information. And I think that it's such a thin line, because it starts off with a comment, someone just asking you, can I eat this if I have this? And then before you know it, you're actually doing something that's more dangerous than it is helpful. So I'm glad that, there are people like you to actually give us information that is proper.
And I think one thing that as dietitians and as healthcare professionals, we're always taught is, if you don't know, say. If you don't have the information, say. And I think that a lot of the times we're more likely to say, okay, this is something that you should go to this professional about. But sometimes it's not always the case across the board, in different professions such as yours, for example. I think it's really important to be able to say, hey, I can't really speak on this. I might only know from my experience because I have a family member in your position, but they went to a health professional. So you need to do the same so that you can actually get that proper care. So I really urge you, if you are someone who has got a platform, if you are someone who's passionate about nutrition, always put those disclaimers out there, because if at all the legislation that's still on the brink of being put into place goes into play, you actually can't give nutrition advice, and you would be fined.
Actually, tell us about that law. Yeah, you spoke about it earlier.
Yeah.
Tell them about that law.
So this law would essentially mean that you can't give any nutrition information if you are not a registered dietitian. So you can't also label yourself as a nutrition coach. You can't label yourself as a nutritionist. You can't label yourself as a health coach or anything that has to do with nutrition or diet if you do not have the backing of that degree of being a registered dietitian. So the law hasn't been put into place yet, but once it's legislated, that means that anyone who has got that title has to now remove it. And then that also means that people who have been giving nutrition information will have to stop. So that's also something just really, really I want to emphasize. The reason why is because of how much damage it does. The misinformation, I can't tell you how damaging it can be to someone's health,
Yeah.
to someone's well-being, to also someone's mental health, especially if they're on this program that they think, oh, it's supposed to do this and that for me.
20-day fast.
Yes,
20,
this and this juice cleanse or whatever it is, it's really, really damaging. So I think it's very important to, the reason for this is to urge people to go and see a health professional. Yes, it's not legislated yet, but the main thing is if you do not have the backing, you need to make sure that you say, hey, I don't know, go and see a registered dietitian, go and see a health professional. Just the same way that if someone came to me and they said, I've been having these and these symptoms, I can't diagnose anything that's out of my scope. I say, hey, I don't know, maybe go see a doctor, go speak to your GP, go speak to a specialist. This sounds serious. And we need to see nutrition as the same. And I think the reason we don't is because food is so personal, right? We all cook every day. We all, it's something that, your own experience with food could be really helpful to other people depending on what your journey is. But it's always important for you to acknowledge that it's your experience and that this is not medical advice, and that what works for me may not work for other people.
True.
Exactly. Because the people who also sometimes give that advice have very high activity levels and will tell you, oh, you need to eat like this, you need to do this and do that. But because your activity level may be different, your lifestyle may be different, your preferences culturally or whatever you like or don't like, and then also your medical history may also be something that's different. Those are all the things we take into account in a session as dietitians, which is where we can actually make a specific plan to you, and every plan is tailor-made and catered to the person in front of them. So that's what you're getting. You're going to be able to get someone who can assist you in front of you for exactly what you're doing in terms of your own health goals, and then you're going to get the full picture of assistance in that.
So as a dietitian, give me 3 misconceptions, miseducation, just things that you've heard that's out there that you want to debunk today.
Oh, this is a
Let's
tough
start with
one.
sugar
There's
and
so
honey.
many. I was actually going to start with the sugar and honey one. I think the big misconception is that if you're having honey, it's healthier than sugar.
So you can have however much you want.
You can have as much as you want because, it's got all these vitamins and things like that. Yes, honey has got some vitamins and minerals in there. And yes, it's got some immune properties. So, if you are sick, we've seen that people who are sick who do consume some honey, it does help to alleviate some of their symptoms. But it's not necessarily healthier. If you look at how we rank, especially any foods that have got sugars or carbs, we use this index called the glycemic index. So, on some foods you might see low GI. That means it's low in its glycemic index. So that means that it's basically how we measure how foods affect us in terms of the energy levels. So a low GI food would be something that gives you more sustained energy, where a high GI food will give you an energy spike. And if we look at how we rank sugar and honey, if honey was healthier, it would be in the low GI range, but both of them are actually in the intermediate GI range. So our body will recognize honey and sugar similarly.
Sure.
Our body can't tell whether we're having honey or sugar because there's such a small difference between the glycemic index of the two. 64 to 65 or 62 to 65 is very small. So because of that, it's not necessarily healthier. We still have to keep in mind, if I'm having a teaspoon of honey, it's like having a teaspoon of sugar. It contributes to my daily sugar needs. And I always say, World Health Organization, 6 teaspoons is the recommendation in a day. And that's the sugar you add into your tea or coffee, or the sugar that's already in a product. So that's about 25 grams in total of sugar that we recommend. But it is not healthier necessarily that you can add as much as you want. You've got extra vitamins and minerals, but it will still be recognized as sugar in the body.
Okay, got you. And then the next 2?
Next to, I think bread gets a bad reputation. I think people think bread is the biggest enemy of in terms of carbs. And I honestly can say that is a very big misconception. It's more the type of bread.
Okay.
Because, for instance, if you are someone who, let's say you're trying to eat healthier, you're trying to maybe lose weight, going for a bread that has a lower glycemic index, so it will give you more sustained energy, is what I recommend. And it's so convenient that it might actually help you to sustain healthier habits because it's that accessible, convenient source of carbohydrates, which we still do need if you're looking to lose weight. So bread is more the type of bread. It's not necessarily to say bread should be cut out completely.
That's how most people fall off the wagon.
Yes,
Bread.
because bread is such an easy one to fall off the wagon because
especially because it's so convenient,
Yeah.
right? So thank you for that.
Yeah, it is so convenient. That's why I say, you know what? It's more how you're eating the bread. What are you adding? Are you adding some chicken? Are you adding some tuna? Are you trying to add some vegetables in there as toppings as well? So it's how you're eating the bread and the type of bread that is very important.
Last one.
The last one. I think the Ozempic conversation is a very interesting one because I think a lot of people... Very topical. And of course, I can't go into all the details of that. Otherwise, we would be talking until sundown. But when it comes to Ozempic, I would really, really say this is a drug that is supposed to be for people who have got diabetes. That is the main group of people who are supposed to be on it. And the people who have then secondarily been prescribed Ozempic in other countries has been for weight management. And this is for people who are morbidly obese, who have difficulty recognizing when they're hungry or full. So their hunger and fullness hormones are dysregulated, which is something that can happen if you are morbidly obese. So that group of people, that is where I would recommend the Ozempic. And of course, speaking to your health professional. But this is not for everyone because we only know how Ozempic affects people long-term in terms of diabetes. We don't have the same information for weight loss. So now we're starting to see all of these symptoms from people using Ozempic long-term, the Ozempic face and all of these things that we're basically using everyone as a case study who's taking Ozempic because we don't have the science to see what it does in the long term. So I would definitely say that is the one that you need to be very careful of. A lot of the time, if you don't have any of those issues in terms of being clinically morbidly obese or being, having diabetes and living with diabetes, then you really, really should look at your lifestyle because there's a lot you can add into your lifestyle to actually still get to those goals. It's just that people want a quick fix, and Ozempic does seem to be one of those quick fixes that people have. But really the main thing is those lifestyle changes that you make, because if you can make a sustainable lifestyle change, you will gradually lose the weight, but you'll keep the weight off, and that's what you want.
So true. We want to keep it off.
Yeah.
So tell me, for someone listening to this episode and they're interested in working in food, and then now they've discovered that they can be a dietitian and they love what it is that you do, how would you advise them to go about?
I would say go for it. I mean, there are lots of different programs where you can study dietetics. So I would say apply, put yourself out there, even if it means you do some courses, but really getting the knowledge, because the information that we have online is really, it's very misleading, and it's not going to be always what the science is saying. We really want to learn the science when it comes to nutrition. It's not just about weight loss, but it's about the nutrition science in terms of disease management as well. So I would say get out there, get the knowledge, and don't let your knowledge from your experience be the thing that leads you alone, but let the knowledge that you get from learning more be something that leads you. And go through an official program. That way you can confidently know that whether or not the legislation goes into place, you can continue doing what you're doing.
I was going to say that you won't get arrested
exactly.
for telling people the wrong thing.
Exactly.
And you speak a lot about, making your profession not only accessible, financially, and also culturally appropriate. Tell me why that is so important to you, to make it so accessible to, a big majority of our country.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think it boils down to, the majority of our country are Black and brown people of color. And I think there's a lack of representation in the health space, and especially in the nutrition space. If I think back to the days when I was studying, there were two of us as Black women in our entire class of graduates of that year. So really just trying to make sure that people are able to have that representation and to debunk a lot of things. I think that misinformation around nutrition and what that looks like culturally, because another angle which I'm still so passionate about and I wish we learned more about is indigenous foods. They are, I think, that term superfoods is thrown around a lot, but the foods that we have that are indigenous to South Africa are really, really beneficial, because if we're thinking of the nutrients in them, we're going to have high levels of nutrients because they're all harvested and we're eating them seasonally. So there is so many benefits of the foods that we have, that because there hasn't been that nutrition science to actually delve deeper into it and to study it more, we don't realize how beneficial it is. And that's why my prof from Stellenbosch, I will always take my hat off to her, because she's so passionate about that. She's the one person who's done so much research in the space of indigenous foods in South Africa, and I think we need a lot more light shed onto that.
Absolutely, and indigenous foods they are so accessible. There are communities that still eat that way right now, but they don't know how beneficial they are.
It's extremely beneficial.
Would you do a cookbook?
Yeah, definitely. That's something I would look into. But I think the collaboration would work really well with also a chef in future, because I think from a nutrition side of things, I know what ingredients I can recommend, where a chef can take those ingredients and put them together and make them into a way that's flavorful. So it's definitely something that I would look into in future, but as a long-term goal, definitely partnering with people such as yourself to make something like that.
Because I do think there is that gap. There are chefs that make very delicious, wonderful, great-looking food, but there's that gap in information about what exactly is in that food and what that food does to the body. So I can't wait to see that book.
Yeah, no, I'm excited. It's already in the works.
And then what would you say are some of the challenges as someone that's a dietitian?
I think one of the biggest challenges is advocating for the profession, because I think we are consistently undermined. We are healthcare professionals, so walking into a ward where there's surgeons, there's doctors, there's nurses, sometimes they can just undermine you, especially if they don't understand the scope of what we do, and which is also another thing. A lot of people in the health professional space don't understand what dietitians do. So that's something that's one of the big challenges, I would say. We really have to continuously advocate for our profession and to say, hey, I'm here and I deserve to be here, and this is how your patients can benefit from me being here. So and even outside of that, I think in general, in even the social media space, I know so many dietitians who have so much experience and expertise, but because they have maybe 500 followers on Instagram, people are not going to take them seriously. So that's the unfortunate thing, in the day and age we're at, that even if you have someone who's a professional, who has the experience, who may have a really successful practice, if the social media numbers don't show, people on social media will think, this person may not know what they're talking about. So that's a big challenge in both spaces, and I think it's something that I continuously will always do. I always want to advocate for my profession, and I'm so big on supporting other dietitians and shining light on other dietitians as well, because I think that there's such a big scope of what we can do that it's so useful for people to see, I can go to a dietitian who specializes in or has a special area of interest in seeing children, and I have a child who suffers with this and this condition, let me go and see them. Or maybe if you're struggling with your relationship with food, you can go and see a dietitian and see them in conjunction with a psychologist to help support your relationship with food. There's so many areas that dietitians work in, and the biggest challenge is really just advocating for people to see the value in what we do in the health space and in the media space as well.
And of all the spaces you've worked in, you've done actual hospitals, the private sector. What has been your favorite space, and what's the space that you currently work in? What's that like?
I would definitely say I really enjoy working with people in a kind of outpatient setting. So that would be someone who would come into my practice, and I really enjoy corporate as well, because one thing I've learned about, especially now, like my journey as a dietitian, is we are really such teachers, hey? We really have to take that nutrition science and break it down and make it easily understandable. So I'm really passionate about working in the corporate space. I do corporate wellness quite a bit, and my history in corporate wellness is also where that passion came from. But yeah, I really love supporting people and helping people on their different health journeys, and whatever that may be. It can be a fertility journey as well, because nutrition is quite a big component in terms of that as well. So it's a very rewarding space. I think the hospital space is a space that I didn't see myself being in long term, just because I find that I connect a lot with people. So if you've been seeing a patient for a while and maybe they pass away or they get discharged, it's like I put a lot of kind of mental energy into patients, and I started to realize that you have to kind of, as a health professional in that space, you have to draw a line and create a barrier of, okay, like, I'm at work now, I can't really, be as much as you can have that empathy. There's only to a point. Otherwise it really does start to affect you mentally. So it's something that I realized, and I had to just be true to myself, and that's why I said, let me just go into my own thing. So I'm completely in the private practice space now, fully independent, so working under my own practice, which is very exciting. So it's a really great space to be in. There's a lot of areas for growth, but again, you're always consistently having to advocate for what you do and to put yourself out there, and social media has been a really great platform for me to actually, because in the past, most dietitians have to get referrals from doctors. The majority of my referrals are actually people who find me online on TikTok or on Instagram. So that's something that I'm really grateful for the social media age as well for.
That is amazing. That's amazing. So now that you've conquered all of these things, what are your future plans? What else is there that you want to do?
I think, continuing to do what I'm doing now. So doing more of it, of course. So I want to work more in the corporate space. I want to work a lot more in the media space and just nutrition advocacy space. That's really the space that I'm very passionate about. And then, as much as I can do in terms of working alongside people in whichever capacity that may be in my practice, or I think in future I really want to branch more into groups. So like support groups, I think would be something really interesting and exciting that I'm going to launch soon, just because I feel like when you're going through a journey and you're not feeling like you're going through it alone, you're so much more motivated to continue. So that's something that I am going to launch soon. Probably by the time this comes out, I would have launched it as well. So I'm excited for that.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Aziwe, for taking the time to speak to us. I'm sure after this, everyone will know what the difference between a registered dietitian is and everybody else that's just sharing health information online because they have a passion. So thank you so much for making the time to come and chat with us.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you. We'll see you on the next episode. This has been Chefing Beyond the Kitchen. Hope you enjoyed this conversation. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. I'll see you on the next one.